Hello, welcome everyone. We are live on Twitter Spaces and Twitch simulcast. Welcome to this event. This is a live Ask Me Anything, chat, chill, cool vibes here. We talk about anything NFT, Web3, no questions too dumb, no questions too deep.
Dope Dopes Mafia. Hey, what's going on, guys?
Yo.
Hey there.
How's it going? Where are you calling from?
We're based out of Michigan.
Cool.
I kind of understand the logic. We're working on something that we're calling the Foster Protocol. And so essentially what happens with it is the smart contract dictates a floor price of 0.05 ETH, or of 0.5 ETH at the point of mint. And then each week it lowers that price by 0.05 until it levels out at 0.15 in perpetuity. And what we're trying to figure out is how to listen to the transaction, where if anybody tries to list underneath 0.15 at any given time, that we're able to listen to that transaction and then make something happen.
So obviously the easiest thing you can do is just have a website and then blow people up that do bad things, put them on a naughty list. One benefit of this approach is it's easy. You can definitely do it in one day. You don't have to audit the smart contract. You don't have to audit anything. 2, if you make a mistake, you can undo it. 3, you can program an infinite number of marketplaces. For example, if somebody even tweeted that they were thinking about listing it for below the price, then you could ding them for even thinking about that. So you could build in arbitrary rules and you could make new rules. It's attractive for some reasons. And then, of course, in the same way that you have all this power, the bad news is that some people might not trust you with this power, or they might call it, quote, centralized. Do the pros and cons make sense on that idea?
Yes, absolutely. So we're trying to stay away from doing anything front end.
No, I got you. So I want to use that as a baseline before we start going deeper into programming. You know what I mean?
All right, absolutely.
Cool. All right. So the next approach is you would control your own marketplace. So you would encourage people not to use OpenSea. I know a lot of people want OpenSea, but you could actually do these transactions yourself on your own marketplace. This gives you 100% control. You can control every price. And in fact, you can prevent people from transferring anything unless they use your marketplace. There are some early NFT contracts back in the day that did this, such as something sort of like CryptoPunks. You can't even just give it to somebody. Back in the day, that's what people were thinking. So that's kind of like off the rails on the other direction. You have full control. Does that make sense too?
Yes, absolutely.
And you probably don't want to do that because you want to support existing marketplaces, right?
Yes.
Cool.
So we ran into this issue. We realized that we were asking the wrong question. So we were asking ourselves, how do we listen to the marketplaces? And then we want to be able to essentially, I guess, you would say, rehome the NFT.
Actually, something just did come out recently with this Seaport. So I do want to give you one specific answer related to that. Seaport approach. We're getting to that. That's going to be more complicated. But so the next approach you could use, for example, do you want to ding people for even listing, not even for selling, right?
Yeah, as soon as they try to list it for under that, we want that to be flagged and aired.
Got it. So we can ding them. So here's what we're going to do. This is going to be per marketplace and per protocol. So OpenSea has currently 2 protocols, and then all the other marketplaces have 1 protocol. So what I'm describing will only work on OpenSea version 2, aka Seaport. Or you'll have to recode it for each one of these things. Let's say we're just going to pick one marketplace. So what you would do is you would create an event parser. So when you try to buy on OpenSea, right, what's happening is all this stuff is off-chain. The blockchain doesn't know anything until the transaction is ready to go. At that point, you are staring at an actionable thing, right? Like that's hot.
Yes.
So that means somewhere there's a database storing this magic authorization. If you're staring at a button where you can click send money, then that means your computer has all the details necessary to execute that transaction. Even before you hit go, when it says estimate gas, it's actually pretending to hit that button for you. So it's warmed up. So what you can do is you can actually analyze that. So you can analyze that transaction and you can see what price is being affected in there. So you would have to load the OpenSea website, click on the floor price, find that person. When you click on it on OpenSea, it would send the details to you. So what you do is you watch that, and then you load the website, you get the naughty evidence, and then you send it to the smart contract. The smart contract will parse this and validate that, yes, this is in fact a defective market listing or whatever, and then you proceed from there entirely inside the smart contract. Now, what the smart contract cannot do, what is not possible, is for this to happen while you're sleeping. There's got to be a robot or a human looking for these things, asking OpenSea about these listings, and then sending it to the smart contract to mediate. This is kind of like, you might call this an optimistic protocol.
If I'm understanding you correctly, because again, I'm not a developer, I'm kind of going ahead.
We're cool.
Essentially, like there's got to be an intermediary between the contract and OpenSea.
There's an intermediary, but it does not need to be a trusted intermediary. If your smart contract has this like report defector feature, you could even pay a bounty because anybody could provide this evidence. It doesn't need to be you. Compare that to scenario A is centralized. Only the admin can report people. Scenario B is walled garden. Only transactions happen on your marketplace. Your marketplace. Scenario C, optimistic. Anybody can access OpenSea and get prima facie of defecting, which is validated on chain.
Oh, William, my developer is actually in the room with us, J4Y3.
Yo, what's up, J4Y3?
He might be able to ask these questions a little bit better than I can.
Yeah. J4Y3, did you hear this so far?
Yeah, so what I'm getting, though, is that with any of these options, there's going to be an opportunity for someone to slip through the cracks, correct?
Not, well, define crack, but if we're talking about OpenSea, then this is foolproof, assuming you have motivated people that are going to check these things. Let's assume with a bounty.
Okay, so I guess if someone were to list under that dictated floor, if someone was not checking for that, it could essentially be sold for that price.
Oh, it could sell. It can sell. You cannot prevent the sale, but you will have evidence of it.
Okay, I gotcha.
So there's a few things you could do. One, if your goal was to burn the token, you cannot do that until after the fact. Like if you're giving OpenSea the authority to make transfers on the marketplace, then you can't stop that transaction until after it goes through, because you don't know about it until it goes through. Regarding the offer you can ding them just for making the offer.
Right, and I think where my concern lies is that our goal is to reown the NFT from whoever is committing, whoever we're thinking. If that sale goes through, then essentially that NFT has been transferred already from the offender to whoever collected. So that then would be us removing it from the other person's wallet who essentially bought it, thinking that they were gonna have the NFT.
Right.
And that's something that kind of concerns me, because that would be...
It's dick. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a bad case for a lot of reporters.
Yeah, but also these things move quickly. You can ding them quickly.
Well, could something fancy be done with a fallback function?
Here's the problem, is that you can stop any transfer from happening. But the problem is, if people are in OpenSea, your smart contract won't know what happened until it hit it.
Right.
So you don't see any of those details as it's happening, which is kind of rough.
Doesn't the wallet have to interact with the contract in order for them to list?
No. The listing happens off-chain. So only when the listing is executed does the effectuation happen.
So if I'm understanding you right, essentially what you're saying is that this to work, we would like the best way for this to work would be for us to place a bounty on anything that's listed underneath that. If I'm understanding correctly, intercept the transaction.
Yes. So just a brief note about bounties. Whenever you do a bounty, you have to burn ether. There's got to be, that prevents people from claiming their own bounty at zero risk. Just a brief design note. Let's say your price is, 0.4 right now, and somebody defects at 0.3, and let's say you're going to steal the token back or deactivate or rehome or whatever it is you're going to do. Then you should be providing a 0. You're planning to resell that, right, at 0.4. So you should be providing, let's say, for example, 0.05. Sorry?
We're not reselling it.
Okay, so then you're going to have money available to pay that bounty.
Right. Essentially what's happening is that we have a staking function, and that Doberman will be rehomed to someone that's staking.
Cool. But you got to have liquid assets to pay out immediately that bounty.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure you understand that if you're, for example, paying an ERC20 or an Ether, that you must keep available value in your contract. Otherwise, your commitment to pay that payout is invalid if you don't have liquidity. We're going to go to Retromore. We're going to talk about whether this is legal too. But and 100%, this is not financial advice. This is not FTC advice. This is not SEC advice. But yeah, so this floor price, you're going to have to say like 0.05 gets paid out to the reporter, and then 0.05 gets burned, straight burned, doesn't go anywhere. Now, why would you burn ether? The reason why is because when the ether is burned, this proves that nobody's colluding. Like, for example, if the reporter got 0.05 and then you got 0.05, goes into the DAO. Well, if the DAO wanted to defect, then the DAO would both get the 0.05 and the 0.05. So it would be costless for the DAO to defect, right? And the DAO could front run, the DAO could make a transaction, front run itself, and then list at any price it wanted. Now, I know that's not a scenario that makes sense, but nothing makes sense, and you have to plan on, things that happen. So you always want to burn it or send it to charity or send it to somewhere that absolutely could not be in cahoots with, the defector.
So if we had a charity wallet, which we do have a donation wallet in our smart contract, would it be smart to send half of that bounty to the donation wallet?
Yeah. So you want to send enough of your bounty has to go to make it worth somebody's while to load OpenSea all day. Like they're going to have to F5 that website to find it. And they're going to have to pay the gas cost to do this thing. So however this works, that's got to be beneficial to them. The burning payment, if it goes to your charity wallet, this has got to be, doesn't matter how much is going there, but it's got to be enough that you wouldn't yourself or the charity itself wouldn't go run this scheme. Now, if the charity is you, then what's to stop you yourself from doing that? Just like the easiest thing in the world to understand. If OpenSea gets 2.5% of every transaction, what's stopping OpenSea from buying and selling things on their own website for $1 trillion to boost their liquidity? What's the answer to that question? There's nothing.
Yeah, I can't think of a feasible answer for that.
Right. So that means if you ever buy an NFT marketplace, you should assume that all the liquidity is fake because they can just print liquidity. So since they're receiving all the money, they can just print all the money. So you cannot trust the liquidity figures for people that receive the bounty payments or the fee percentages. You just cannot trust the number. It's an upper bound. But the number can always be lower than that because they can just print it. Same thing for you. If you're the defector, it doesn't prevent you. And anybody can be anybody. And also, you might think like, oh, well, obviously I wouldn't do that. And people would know. It's not obvious, and you could be anonymous. So you might get to a point in your project where, 0.4 is not a reasonable price. And you would rather sell it for 1.15, right? You would rather cut your own legs out because otherwise nobody's going to buy. Now you're in the situation where you could defect and get away with it and not spend anything. The only way to get rid of that is either A, burn the ether, or B, send it somewhere where there's absolutely no confusion that they would not collude with you. Like sending it to another organization that is entirely different mission. But then people just burn because it's easier to prove that the Red Cross is not colluding with your marketplace to lower the price. It's like, would the Red Cross do that? Would the Red Cross really? But there you go. So the approach that I gave regarding OpenSea is difficult. You would need to create a parser for these deals to understand if the evidence that's provided is accurate proof of defecting. And PS, you need to do it for every single marketplace. So you would need to do it for OpenSea, Rarible, Mintable, art blocks, whatever, any place you could buy or sell NFTs, you could do that. And at the end of the day, you do not control private sales. So anybody can go on Twitter and say, hey, send me a quick 0.1 and I'll send this to you. There's no way for you to stop that. Unless you go with option scenario B, where you don't allow any transfers whatsoever.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the easiest option and path of least resistance here would be to do this front end.
For sure. Just as is life.
Jay, you getting all this?
Yeah, frankly, I don't like any of it. But, I really prefer that it would be another way. But I totally understand why it's the case. And I think it just becomes on us, as a business to think about ways in which we can, secure the thoughts of our holders, And I think that's just going to be something we have to think about as a business if we want to, how we want to do that. So, but I totally understand, what William was saying. So,
well, so on that topic, or I guess taking it a broader thing, what are your thoughts on the wisdom of setting floor prices for NFTs or other digital assets like this?
So our thought on this was we have this partnership with Doberman Underground. They're a 501c3 organization, and they have an adoption process, right? And they have a contract that gets signed after the adoption process. So the whole idea behind this was to bring that process over to Web3, so to speak, in that if you were to list underneath this dictated floor, that your Doberman would run away from your wallet and would leave a pile of 3D crap in your wallet. And so we've kind of been spinning our heads trying to figure this out. So that's that's kind of the gist of it.
This might turn what is seemingly an NFT into a, quote, common enterprise, which means it's a security, which means that you need to register as a security when you sell these things.
Could you expand on that a little bit?
You bet. If this organization is registered in USA or we are marketing to people in the United States to buy this thing, we need to follow US laws. And so there's a couple laws that you might want to look out for. One of them is the Howey test. And so the Howey test is a 4-point. If you have an investment of money in a common enterprise with the expectation of profit derived from others, that means you have a security. So these are 4 points. You need to hit all 4 points. Is this an investment of money? Yes. Is this sent as a commercial sale? Is it a common enterprise? That is the important question. Typically, NFTs are not common enterprises to the layman. You could probably argue that they're not because each one of them is different. But if you're treating them only as a thing that's at a price, this makes this a harder sell. When you're in court, and I've seen these things go to court, it's harder for you to justify that this is a unique asset when the main proposition for value is its price. With an expectation of profit, people, even linking your website to OpenSea probably means you're giving people the expectation of profit and to be derived from the efforts of others. If you're not working very hard to increase the value of the thing, the reason that you're making money is because other people are working, then what you've described is basically, stock in a company. This is one thing that may or may not come up. I'm working with the defense on one of these types of lawsuits. And basically, what you want to be prepared for is you sell a thing, somebody buys it, they get buyer's remorse, and then they sue. Oh, and P.S., it's the person who bought lots of your stuff and the person who's buddy with you, and you said a bunch of things that they screenshotted before they gave you their money. It's always that person. Second point is this could be considered collusion, price collusion, just in the same way that you can't control your own company and competitors from price collusion. It might be a problem if you're trying to convince other people to collude on pricing, because this is a price collusion. If you have a game where you're banging people for selling too low, that's price collusion. That's a cartel.
Would it be if we're replacing it with another item of value?
I don't know. How much valuable is that piece of poop?
Whatever the market dictates.
So, I mean, if this was designed, and again, these things, these are not nerds that understand the Howey test. You'll be in a court of your peers explaining to people like on this phone call, just like with the words that I just used. So if the prosecution says, well, yeah, there's a price for the dog and there's a price for the poop, but clearly this is a punitive measure. Clearly the goal of this is to prevent the sale at a certain price. If that is the angle, then you're probably going to lose that argument. They're going to be like, yeah, this is clearly meant to be punitive. So punitive is meant to be something that, to prevent somebody from doing something.
The goal is to prevent, the problem that we saw in the market was that, whales have too much control of, let's say, FOMO.
Yep.
They create FOMO into a project, and they can just as easily create FOMO out of a project.
Yep.
And so this was our effort to solve this problem.
There's other ways to do it. There's lockup periods, which I have not seen people get in trouble for that. I mean, possibly you can call that price collusion, but it's a very typical process in a lot of things. When you buy something, you can't sell it right away, or you pay money now, but you don't receive the thing for a while, which also means you can't sell it. You can't sell it at any price. So if we're getting into tokenomics and buy pressure and sell pressure, that is an obvious thing. Again, this is not legal advice. I've seen that happen. I've not seen people get in trouble for that. And there's probably a natural way to work that into your game, like CryptoKitties. That had buy and sell pressure figured out in their tokenomics. You buy a CryptoKitty, it's breeding, you can't mess with it. You can't sell it while it's breeding. And, breeding is an important activity in the game. So it would be pretty hard to walk into a jury and be like, well, yeah, I bought a CryptoKitty, but it's a security because these f***ers, they wouldn't let me sell it because I was breeding it with another cat to make more cats. Really? Is that a security, or is that just you playing a game? Are you really investing in that cat, or are you just playing with it? That would be a hard sell to the jury. But these are some of the things, that you might want to look out for, and there's probably more. But these two are definitely at least orange flags.
Okay. So in essence, if I'm hearing you correctly, we kind of need to rework this.
Put it this way, I would not be your advisor for this project as it currently is in any jurisdiction.
Okay.
And I don't get involved with DeFi, but this doesn't pass my smell test. It's a good starting point, and you're not bad people for coming up with these ideas. You're not criminals for thinking about sell pressure in your NFT drop, right? You're just reaching the limits of laws, and you're designing your product, and you're asking the same questions. A lot of people are thinking about this. There's some footprints on this track.
I know this one NFT project called CyberCons actually follows, like if you transfer one of those, it will follow it with a separate token that they created later, and they both move together. That's a weird mechanism I haven't seen before that, could be similar to what you're trying to do here, where in like one atomic transaction, multiple things go different places. I'm not sure, but just an idea.
Right. So you could implement that a couple ways. You could implement that on the smart contract. So you could have two different NFTs. You could have one NFT control the other NFT. So you could have the dog and the shadow of the dog. The shadow of the dog contract would be controlled entirely by the dog contract. The dog contract would move the shadow with the dog. Somebody would be responsible for appending the shadow onto the dog. These are things you could do. If it's punitive, that's not going to solve your problem if that's why you're using. But this is a very bad year to be pointing at other people and saying, look, they're doing this, so it's legal. Regulators are currently 5 years behind on enforcement actions. If you've seen anybody do something in the past 5 years, they still could be getting sued for it. But if you're looking at something, from before 2016 and they haven't gotten sued yet, maybe they won't. And that's just criminal court. We're not talking about civil court.
Right. Jay, do you have any questions for him?
No, this was great. I really appreciate all the information. It was definitely a lot more detailed than what I've been able to get into myself. So I really appreciate the time.
Thank you. My pleasure. When you use the word floor price, you're turning a unique thing into a commodity. And when OpenSea even talks about bidding on attributes, again, they're doing the wrong thing. Just like how Axie Infinity stopped using the word play to earn because obviously that whole concept is illegal, OpenSea should likewise not be using floor price or attribute bids. They're just, history is going to prove them wrong here. They're on the wrong side of history. What they're doing is they're trying to turn NFTs into some financial thing, and they're making it more and more like a security. If they're commoditizing NFTs, when you're trading commodities, expect the CFTC to come after you for registration. So I don't like what OpenSea is doing and LooksRare's when they're doing these things. And so I don't condone that. And I know I'm probably way ahead of the curve on.
Can they argue something about democratizing the art market? It doesn't Sotheby's or whoever fancy art auctions at floor prices.
There's no way that Sotheby's, where you can buy various of a set of things at the same price. Sotheby's, you're always buying a thing for a price. But when barrels of oil are things that you buy, any of them, for a certain price. Nobody goes on TV and says, I bought that barrel of oil for twice as much because it's platinum. There's no platinum oil, right? There's just oil. When we talk about, oil should definitely be regulated as a commodity, nobody's taking the other side of that argument. But when regulators come and they be like, NFTs are commodities, and we're like, what? They're unique snowflakes. They're literally unique snowflakes. And they're like, well, that's not how you're marketing them. You're marketing them as something with a floor price that are interchangeable, fails the Howey test. Now NFTs are a commodity. And that would just blow people's minds. And I think that'll happen. The magic secret is these marketplaces want it to be a commodity. They want it to be DeFi. They want it to be this San Francisco Machiavelli business model where they just control everything and you just put money in and guarantee profits with no regulation. That's what they want. So that's like the open secret, but they're going to get smacked.
What if instead of doing that, we took your bounty idea and applied that to okay, if you purchase this for X amount, you get X amount bounty. No, that still doesn't work. What if we flip the URI?
Is it punitive? If the purpose is punitive.
Right, it doesn't. Okay.
I'll get you, and again, I'm not telling you these are solutions, but other ideas are staking, not staking, but like a lockup period. Staking implies that you're going to be earning yield and should be, registered securities. Lockup periods, the Jewish people, they have a special thing, interest is illegal. It's in the Bible or something. It's from the Old Testament and it's from, the Quran. I'm going deep into the scripture. And it's like, you can't charge people for borrowing money. Well, what do? Well, they have a lockup period instead. So instead of charging you 1% per year, they charge you a flat $1,000 fee for borrowing $20,000. It's not interest. People are smart, right? And God allows that. So none of these people, were struck down. So God allows interest by using lockup periods. Why can't you use lockup periods instead of staking to achieve your goal? Again, this is not legal or religious advice. First time I said that.
Man, you're going deep on it here.
I don't think you'll be accused of religious advice.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a thing.
But I think it's
you definitely give us a lot to think about.
Islamic finance, not Jewish finance.
But no, I'm saying these are literally how you make workarounds to rules about interest rates. This is a well-documented, studied theological problem. And I would love to argue this in court, man.
So we have to find a workaround here.
Yep. Well, and again, this is not business advice either. You are taking on a risk in the U.S. market under U.S. regulations if you do that.
So essentially, there is no protecting the value.
No, you can. The lockup period predicts, sell pressure. Is this not in the Old Testament anywhere? Did you just quote this in Islamic? Awesome.
No, it's in the Old Testament. I think you're right. One other
Nice.
design question I was wondering is, have you ever seen a gas subsidy model work correctly? Like, I know that's kind of unbounded, but it also feels like practically bounded, but then people can do a lot of trades. So I guess that all falls back to WE.
It's happening.
Would you agree with that? Yeah.
No, this is happening. One of the themes for our topic today is Seaport. Seaport does allow matched transactions. So that means one person on one side could have half the transaction, one person on the other side has the other half, and then bam, somebody pays for the transaction and receives some consideration.
Cool.
That's a good point. Let me bring that up. So that is a third party, they call them relayers, or a referral fee. So also called zero gas.
So we could still place a bounty on the NFT if somebody buys it above the floor price, correct?
You could place a bounty. What do you mean a bounty?
Like you gain, like if there's a reward if you purchase the NFT above the current floor price. Because we do take royalties.
Right. I mean, I guess you could be sharing royalties. You know, Visa does that, right? The more you spend on whatever you're buying, the more points you get. And, you know, when you buy an airline flight for $700, you get nothing. But if you buy the same thing for $800, you get like points. Those people have successfully applied that model. I think you've got some good ideas, and I think you understand the optimization problem here. But I think you're going to come up with a creative idea. Also, I'd like you to please think about it in terms of dogs and bones and poop and leashes and whatever and metaverse. And think about this. I think you'll have a much more natural way to say what you're thinking when you're speaking inside your application.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have, I'm speaking the way I'm speaking here for the sake of, figuring this out.
Yeah.
When we're marketing this, there is nothing punitive involved. It's more of we're attempting to protect the value of your artwork and of your Doberman more than anything.
Yeah.
It's definitely not being marketed like that at all. There's no racketeering here or, false advertisement.
Yeah.
Our intentions are good. It's just not, we just got to figure out a workaround.
The ETH is an investment in that unfortunate way, and the image really doesn't have a price. It's all up in the, who knows of the market at an indefinite period of time. So it's like stuck that way as far as I see it. Just no workaround to that one.
No, you're absolutely correct. You guys have definitely given us a lot to think about here. I'm sure we'll find our workaround for it. Thank you so much, William. We really appreciate your time.